Hi guys, welcome to the Fife Property Market and Property Show. So this is going to be the 2020 review of the Fife Property Market and three Scotland coming out. Now today, I'm your host, Chris Parker. We have Richard Cook, Lettings Director,
Morning.
Jimmy Mullen, Estate Agent in the East Neuk, St Andrews and Cooper area, to co-host with me. So we're going to take questions and answers today. We're more than happy to do that. And how you guys, if you want to respond, if you want to say how you saw the property market in 2020 in general, but we're going to walk through in terms of the report I've put out today. So the 2020 review of the Fife Property Market. So looking back at the Fife Property Market in 2020, it can certainly be a frantic game of two halves, albeit for a very long time in the spring. Between the general election in mid-December and Christmas, many Fife agents saw the unusually high uplift in activity in the property market as we were getting ready for Christmas 2019. In the new year, festivities were out of the way, and the pre-Christmas uplift in the local property market was nothing compared to when the big bang came on Monday, the 6th of January, which fabled the Boris bounce in the Fife property market. January, February, and most of March, actually, were amazing months. With a pent-up demand for people waiting to move and following Brexit uncertainty in 2018 and 9 and the first few months of 2020. You know, is that what we saw, Jimmy?
Yep, totally agree, really. Looking at the numbers compared to what we did last year, we're almost at the same amount of numbers we did last year in terms of bringing stuff onto the market and valuations. And you have to think we've had a 3-month period where couldn't do nothing. So I think that tells you about the numbers moving forward from the whole year compared to last year.
Yeah, how did you see that in January though? I mean, when we got out in January and January to March, I mean, what was your experiences of it?
Yeah, I think people always have the perception that the market's really slow in those times, but stat that I come across recently, which people will be quite surprised at, is in Boxing Day, Rightmove interaction is up 231% to an average day. Mm-hmm. So that tells you over the Christmas period that's time when people's making their choices for what they're doing in the future. So people have the perception that January, February, March is slow. That's not the case. That's the time when the families are together. They can make decisions to plan for the future, get ready for either listing if they want to be in their new home by the summer, or get the home ready for get on the market in the summer. But I wouldn't presume that the market's always slow in that time. But this particular January, February, March was very, very buoyant.
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, Danny. How are you? Thanks for watching the show. Morning, Phil, and morning, Andrea. Anybody else want a big shout out? Just mention yourself. It's shout out day today. Or you could just not say anything and watch the show. Richard, so what was your experiences? I mean, let's talk about, we're primarily talking about the Fife property market, so that would encompass lettings as well. How do you see the first 3 months of the year?
Yeah, I mean, same kind of trends as like Jimmy explains there. I mean, the turn of the year from Christmas into New Year is always busy anyway. I think the start of 2019 was a busy year. Obviously, then we hit lockdown, which obviously restricted us and slowed things down. But by the time we've got to this stage in the year compared to the stage last year, figures are the same, if not slightly higher. It just shows, even though we had those few months where we weren't operating as to a full capacity, we're still at the same level we were the year previous. So, yeah, and it has been a busy start to the year as well.
Yeah, my personal experiences were, I mean, we were on track, and we were on track, and we did have a record year. Yeah. You know, from the end of March, I could not believe it where we had arrived at the end of March itself, because of the amount of activity from January, February, March. But traditionally, we know in December it's, you know, there's a let's be honest, there's a few people that actually begin to say, I can't stand living with you anymore.
That time of year does show.
Let's get Christmas and New Year out of the way first before we actually make that decision. And you tend to find that as well. But you're absolutely right, Jimmy, in terms of the number of, the activity, because a lot of people have a lot of time on their hands at the Christmas period and the New Year period. So the first thing they do is they go to social media, they go to the portals, and they start doing property searching. You know, is that your personal experiences?
Yeah. Oh, you carry on, Richard. Sorry.
I was just going to agree. Yeah, I mean, you find yourself doing it as well, and I think a lot of people are in the same mindset. And it's all you pick your phone up. You're going through the portal searches and things, and that's what we see those trends coming through. Obviously, when we're dealing with things day to day and throughout the year. So.
Mm-hmm. I'd be interested to hear what the viewers think. You know, what your perception is of January, February, March in terms of the property market, and where they saw things. I mean, the Boris bounce, did that affect anything? You know, did the election affect anything? You know, did you feel that affected anything yourself?
I think it did, and I think that the Brexit thing as well. People were on the fence. I think obviously you see a lot on the sales side, but even people that I had a lot of landlords who live overseas and have property here and things, and that it just left them in a element of uncertainty for a while. So it did have an effect, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy?
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot of people that wanted to move that were very hesitant to make that jump and decide what they want to do for the future. But ultimately, if the circumstances are right, they will put it on the market, or if the circumstances force them to, they'll put it on the market as well. But I would say it definitely had a little bit of effect, but you would never have guessed that now the way the market is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as well. I mean, if you're putting your house in the market in January, February, March, my advice typically is get your house on in probably January, towards the end of January into February. You tend to find that March and April is when it starts snowing. You know, and that's when you get it's difficult getting photographs because everything just white. I mean, at Christmas, you know, the snow scene on your house looks absolutely fantastic, but sometimes it doesn't let the actual the buyer actually see what is there in front of them. They just see a sea of white. I mean, you know, you don't even get, because of insulation now, you don't even get anybody's roofs actually, you know, dissipating the snow anymore. The snow always sits on the roof now, and it just walks away. So probably the best advice, I mean, would be, if you're putting your house in the market, is actually to do it in early January, you know, to mid-February, and as quick as possible. But then, you know, you have your market as well, where a lot of people actually hold off till spring. But the huge advantage of actually putting your house on earlier is you have all the pent-up demand still from Christmas. And therefore, you're actually getting that opportunity to get in there before everybody else, to capitalise on that market. Because the key is here to have more people chasing your house or less houses in order to increase demand. If you sit in line and wait on everybody else, then the reality is you're going to have to compete with everybody else. I mean, let's be honest, you are competing with everybody else. Is that usually the typical example, Jimmy?
Well, I think it's a pretty straightforward answer for people that are looking forward to sell. Ultimately, to get the best price, you need the most amount of people through the door. Most people that are looking at your property to ultimately drive the price up. So more competition is probably going to lead to a higher price. So listing at the correct time of when the portals are going to be busiest, and the time of year for photos is obviously going to be a key. But obviously, if you've got a professional photographer, they can work magic to make it look correctly. I would say that's very important.
The professional photographer edits the photographs.
Not necessarily, but what I would say is I see a lot of bad photos, and it's key to have someone in. Ultimately, a photographer is specialised in taking photos. None of us here, although we've been on photography courses, we ain't professionals. So you need to get professionals in. That's why they call it professional photographers. So that's why they do that job. So also listing that time of year is when you probably decluttered from Christmas and stuff like that. So house always looks the best, most presented, spacious, etc. as well. So good time to agree with you there, Jim. January, February is a good time.
Andrea says, if you see a roof with no snow, then avoid it. The reality is a roof with no snow clearly tells us straight away it's no properly insulated. And that is the key. If you get to a snow period and your roof is the only roof in the street with no snow in it, then you should be in touch with probably Energy Saving Trust Scotland, You know, just go online and Google it, and you'll probably get access to free insulation for your roof space, and that'll solve that problem, I would say. So thanks for that comment, Andrea. Phil says record low interest rates before actual Brexit. You know, really, that's one of the keys as well. The interest rates have actually driven that market, haven't it?
Yeah.
100%. We had, as I said, I think I said previously, we had a lot of cash buyers before the low interest rates come in, and they changed to not being cash buyers and just wanted to get a mortgage, obviously, to save the cash and maybe potentially invest it in somewhere else, another property or whatever that may be, what they want to do with their money. So yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
What's your thoughts, Richard?
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And we did see obviously interest rate change pre-Brexit as well, and then obviously we've seen a big change in the market now in terms of interest rates, and like we spoke about before, obviously what kind of products are being offered in terms of mortgage and things as well. So,
and then the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
who would have predicted that? I mean, for me personally, I thought somebody had just switched the tap off. You know, I thought basically that we were doing a record time, we were doing record results, we were achieving record targets and everything. And then the end of March, basically, it's literally just like somebody switched that off completely. And that's what I say. It's like somebody switched the tap off.
Yeah, I mean, we really
went into complete lockdown, and it was unprecedented times. So the pandemic hit in March, and the Fife property market was put on ice over just over 3 months, as was mostly everyone's lives. Yet to the end of spring, the property market was one of the first sectors of the economy to be reopened. Every economist predicted house price drops in order of 10% in the best case scenario and 25% in the worst. Yet nothing could be further from the truth, and we were the only ones singing that truth. Because if you look back, and I was looking back this morning to the April blogs and vlogs that we had done, we predicted potentially that this is where the market might have been by this time. So, and everybody at that time, I remember, actually said, "You're singing a different song. That does not make sense." But in my opinion, the government can't afford a housing crash.
No, yeah, we spoke about that last week, and I totally agree that, I mean, we hit the ground running in 2019, and obviously when lockdown come around, we're in the kind of mindset, God, it's like somebody's turned the tap off. But I think the way we looked at it and obviously then progressed forward, and obviously where we are now speaks volumes. So,
how was lockdown for you, Richard? I mean, you know, can you remember that 3 or 4 months?
I do. I mean, obviously, I could. But I mean, the start of lockdown, now we had a lot of, obviously, in lettings, we had a lot of transactions and things in place, and obviously the rules were, if you've got transactions in place, you could honour them. So to start with, for the first few weeks, we were still obviously working through lettings, making sure obviously everything that we had in place was followed through and finalised. And then obviously it started to be a wee bit, well, obviously we can't do any new transactions, but I kept busy anyway, and we kept busy, I think, obviously staying relevant, obviously interacting with obviously people through social media and things as well. And I think that's why when we come back after lockdown, obviously there was that big influx anyway, but because we'd stayed prominent, stayed relevant and things, and kept in contact with everybody, we just kind of, like I say, hit the ground running again like we did at the start of 2019, and it's just continued for there. So
how did you experience that though? I mean, you know, because you weren't furloughed. you
weren't
through that period.
I did think I found
you must have felt completely overwhelmed.
I did feel a wee bit like, I mean, I mind thinking, God, I'm working harder than what I usually do, and obviously we work hard anyway. So it was a wee bit added pressure, and it was a big eye opener, and I think it was a big learning curve as well, which I think's good, because then things like that kind of prepare you for any eventuality, and it makes you, like we were talking about the other week, prepare for the uncertainty. So it keeps you on your toes.
What did you learn in lockdown then?
I think I learned in lockdown that I think obviously you get into I mean, obviously I'm not in office a lot, but I mean, obviously a lot revolved around obviously office-based operations and things, and really, I mean, it just shows that I could run things without having to be actually physically in the office all the time. So that was one of the main things I thought was quite, like I say, part of the learning curve.
It was a huge difference. I mean, it really did teach everybody the great. I mean, I don't use the word great lightly, but the great thing that happened was it taught the whole nation and possibly the whole world that we didn't actually need to come into an office to actually do business with people, and the fundamental shift in how we do business can be changed overnight, effectively. But we were obviously already set up for that, because our system always worked on a remote basis from the very beginning. We had designed it like that because we originally ran with Century 21 and had self-employed estate agents. So everything was designed for everybody to work remotely and not actually physically have to be in an office. So it was quite a we were a wee bit way ahead of everybody else before when that actually happened.
Yeah, and I think lockdown gave us that opportunity to kind of utilise it and adapt on that and really put it into action. And well, it works. Definitely.
Good morning, Craig. How are you? Any questions, just give us a shout. And Phil's response: after lockdown, people listened to predictions, so less properties on the market, supply and demand, really. That's what it comes down to. Jimmy, lockdown, what did it teach you? What did you learn?
I would say how much we rely on other people as well, how important relationships are, not only with friends, family, but everybody, and how you treat people, because it's vital to have those relationships and help people. Just like ourselves here was helping friends of ours that couldn't do it with shopping, and my family lives in Devon, but helping Charlotte's mum and dad and their neighbours with their shopping and stuff like that. So it's key to treat everybody well, because you never know when they're gonna need you, or you'll need them, etc. So yeah, I think it was more about relationships and people that I learned by myself, really.
Yeah.
In terms of our market, I mean, in terms of myself, I mean, obviously, I wasn't furloughed either. I lasted 2 days and then phoned the accounts department and said, I can't do this. I have to work. I won't go crazy sitting doing nothing. So I was immediately, I just said, forget it, I'm back. And I immediately set to work in terms of developing skills and new skills in areas that we have never touched before. Video production was a classic example. We've seen the rise completely from our end of video production, social media, retargeting, making sure we hit the right audiences, actually finding the people that we're after for our market, and not waiting for them to find us, and actually finding people that are looking to buy a house before they actually know they're looking to buy a house, based on patterns of behavior. I mean, that's remarkable. We learned that in lockdown. I mean, that was mind-blowing. And then all the masters that we learned from was Lisa Novak from Australia, the social media queen, like McGrath, estate agents in Australia, the $1 million estate agents in America, and all the people in England who were actually leading the way in terms of estate agency, in terms of what they're doing. And it was a huge, huge thing to be a difference for us in terms of how we do things. So I hate to say it, but for me, lockdown was a blessing in disguise. It allowed me to actually sit back and reassess and refocus and actually see where we want to go and how we want to do it, and move into a new area of technology in terms of how estate agency will be done in the future, almost to the point of cutting edge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you see, you referenced these people who, I mean, are light years ahead of some people in the market. And I mean, learning for them through lockdown and the training we did and things, and learning techniques and strategies about actually putting yourself in front of people before they even sometimes realise that you need to be they needed you in front of them. Do you know what I mean? To help them. Yeah, I did. I learned a lot through lockdown as well. It was quite a like I say, a really good learning curve and an experience in itself.
I think looking back on it for me as well, it was actually the things that I really liked and I really enjoyed was actually helping the community. It led me into an era, a zone of producing a lot of helpful content blogs and vlogs in terms of how things are done, and how to overcome anxiety. 5 different ways to overcome anxiety, 5 different ways to deal with your kids in lockdown, all these different things that I got involved in. I loved it. You know, I love the whole process, and I still love that now. You can see, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be doing this.
No,
that's the reality. If this hadn't happened, we wouldn't be in the era of technology of video production and actually on social media channels and actually using that to their benefits and our customers' benefits to hit record numbers and record figures and record prices. You know, that's not me saying that. That's the surveyor. You know, the surveyor's coming back to us now and saying, I can't believe what you're achieving in terms of how you're doing it and what you're actually getting. You're getting new price bandings for properties in all areas that you're in. And I think that's down to what's happened and what we've learned from it. It's interesting. Thank you for your comment, Karen. Really appreciate it. Nothing was on. I think we've all established that. And this is great. Ellen, thank you so much. Really enjoyed watching your virtual viewings whilst in lockdown. This was another thing that we did. That's actually reminded me, Ellen, we actually sold property in lockdown without anybody walking through a door until they got the keys on the day. Actually selling property on virtual viewings, spending 15 minutes going through the area, going through the drone tours, the home tours, the walkthrough, the talk through, the questions and answers, and people were actually making us offers, and we were accepting offers without anybody walking in the door. And we still use that now. We effectively, I mean, I just got an offer the other day, a closing date for a property in Upper Largo, and it was the guy had never walked through the door. We had saw a drone tour, had saw a home tour, and we'd done some insight into him in the background, and he made an offer at the closing date, as did other people before. I think we can talk about Balconry Green. Balconry Green, is that settled yet, Jimmy?
Yep. Balconry Green, that was
200,000, and we got 243,000 in lockdown on virtual viewing. Yeah, King's Barnes.
Yeah, never seen it. Rung me up on Monday. Walked past the door on Saturday. Rung me up on Monday, and said, "I've just seen it's going to a closing date. What can you tell me about the area?" I said, "Well, I'll send you the drone tour and the walkthrough. Got any questions?" We had a further conversation about the area. The next day was successful at closing date. Don't know if I can well, it's concluded. So it was like 220. I think it was 220. 220 went for about 255 or something like that.
Yeah,
so
about 30,000 more, and the guy had never walked in the door. I remember you actually had to phone the solicitor and say, "Is this guy real?"
yeah, I did, because the solicitor rang me up and said, "This guy's going to be offering. Just want to confirm it's this date, this time." I said, "Yeah," and I said, "Does he know he's never seen the property? And my client, we won't be letting him in until Mrs. concluded." He goes, "Yep, he's absolutely fine with that." So, okay.
I think the expression was, "Sir, I can assure you, my client's got plenty of money."
Yeah.
He can afford it. And at that point, you said, "Any chance of getting another 10,000?"
Yeah.
They're amazing results, but it's not surprising. I mean, watching, Jim, your footage and your virtuals and the drone tours and things that you've done through lockdown and how you've adapted them even further. There was some amazing footage on there, so it's no surprise that people were able to purchase things without actually physically being there, because they were quite comprehensive and detailed. And I mean, I think I remember the one you had the drone footage along the coast at Leiden. That was amazing. Yeah, that was a really good one.
Was that Promfest or was it just? I thought.
No, you were doing the one on Light Street. I think your son
the whole coastal path itself, highlighting each area. Yeah, I remember that. We still use that one now. Yeah. I mean, the key is here. I'd identified if we do all these things now, we could have this footage to put on with every single property we put on. So people outside of our area who don't know Leven, who don't know East Neuk, who don't know Anstruther, who don't know St Andrews, who don't know an area, know exactly what's there by the drone footage we've actually supplied. And it actually gets them to come along and actually view the property or inquire about the property. Otherwise, they wouldn't have. The way it just says, "Well, what is that?" And I'm not interested in that. But as soon as you see a drone footage, it's like, wow, golden sandy beaches, crystal clear waters. What am I missing here? And then a fantastic price point as well compared to what I've got. I mean, when you look at Glasgow, classic example, 2-bedroom flat in Merchant City is £380,000. What am I doing living in Glasgow?
I know.
I could be living for a fraction of the price and a better quality of life on the coast of Fife.
I think the key thing for, sorry, Richard, the key thing for sellers here is that something that I learned during lockdown actually on training courses, 80% of interaction listings on Rightmove is video. So if you don't have video, you're behind everybody else.
Yeah.
And this key here is there's a lot of agents out there that I've heard it now saying, oh, we've got video, but you have to have the right type of video. I mean, I think that's key as well. It has to be interactive. It has to be, there has to be more, but also just putting a video on won't guarantee you success. It's actually got to be retargeted and done in the right social media strategy. And obviously, in terms of to make sure it actually comes up in the rankings, because we know yourself if you put something on social media, they won't let anybody see it until you do certain things to tick their boxes. And we know how to do that. No one else does.
It's definitely all about, obviously, having the right video, positioning it properly online and having it uploaded in a certain way that obviously reaches the right people. But I think, like you say about the interaction, I think I've seen a lot of agents and walkthrough videos and they're good, but it's basically just the property and that's it. But I think whereas what we do is obviously speak to the camera, interact with it, do it on a more personal level. And I think, and even when I'm doing viewings now with people and they're like, oh, I seen you in the video, I watched your video before I come along, and obviously, you've got that interaction, and it's like they already know you before you even at the viewing, and you've never met them.
Personally, I actually think I'm actually taking one person through on a personal level. So when I'm taking somebody through, when I'm talking to someone in a video, for example, I'm talking just to one person, and it's like they're there with me when I take them through the process. So that's exactly the personal touch that I feel that actually gets the person through, to inquire about the property. Because at the end of the day, if they don't pick up the phone or they don't send you an email or they don't do anything else, you can't actually interact with them again. Or can you? Yes, you can, but I'm not telling anybody how to do that.
I like you when
that'll give away the golden nuggets that we know.
You done one in St Andrews, Anstruther's recently, which I quite like, Jim, because at the end of it, you sat down on the couch and spoke to the camera, and like you say, it's like you were actually interacting with an individual. But really, obviously, the video was out there for the masses. But like when you're watching it, you feel like it's a one-to-one kind of thing. So it's quite good.
Do you know where I learned that from?
Where?
The broom cupboard, Philip Schofield.
Really?
Exactly.
I like that. But
I remember seeing an interview years ago with Philip Schofield and Andy Peters and that, and they used to say, how come you're so successful in terms of that, in terms of interacting with the audience? And they actually said, I speak to the camera as if I'm just speaking to one person.
Yeah.
And that person is, got my whole focus and attention. I don't do anything else other than that. And that's how it comes across, and that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, well, it works.
Yeah, James. Morning, James. How are you? Briefly, just watching this morning. Yep, okay. We've got another viewing for the last buy, refurbish, rent, and I'm not really sure what the other that is.
It's fine.
Buy, refurbish, rent. No, buy, refurbish, rent, remortgage. Maybe. BBRR, RYZ, EAFT.
It will be remortgage.
Good luck, James. And Charlotte says, what would your advice be for buyers who are worried about offering at closing dates or for the fear of missing out? That's quite an interesting one. Can I answer that?
You had that one this week, Jim, so I think you would be the best one to answer that.
Exactly. I mean, my advice for people are offering a closing date for fear of missing out. I always say to people, closing dates shouldn't be designed to get more money, okay? They're designed to find your natural price point, okay? So when you go to offer, you want to make sure you offer the right price. So if you do not get it, you could walk away with your head held high saying you gave it your best shot. If you do get it, you don't think for the rest of your life that you've overpaid for a property, because that's how I would feel about it. So that's what, and it's finding that natural price point in your mind about what you think it's worth to you. Now, don't be afraid of maybe saying to yourself, okay, I'm going to pay an extra £10,000 for a property at closing date. Now, the reason for that is because that's its market value. It's not the home report value is not the value of the property. It's only the value of the historical properties that have been sold before. It's not current market value. So if you have to offer 10 or 15 or 20 or 30,000 pound more to get the property you really want, and that's within your budget, and you really want it, and you don't feel that if you get it, that you'll feel perturbed about the fact that you got it and you paid a lot more money. Because if you look at it in this instance, if you're living in a property for 20 years and you've paid £10,000 more, okay, it's £500 a year to have what you want for the rest of your life. You know, what is that worth to you? Everything, I would say, to have the exact property you want. So that's my advice, probably. If you're don't feel a closing date is there to get more money. It's there just to have a finite point in the line where to say, look, everybody put their best offers in. Now, I did have another person in this closing date who says, you're just trying to get more money out of you, I'm off. And I did say to them, you know, the reality was, that's what I'm trying to tell you, but you put your best foot forward. I've had closing dates before for myself offering them property. We've been a landlord, and I've actually put in below the market value, and I've ended up getting it because everybody else thought they were having to pay more money, and they didn't offer. So I ended up getting it below. But that's a few years back. But classic example is you put in what it's worth to you and put your best foot forward, and you never know what's going to happen for you. So that's my advice to anybody that's thinking about offering a closing date who fears missing out.
I will just say as well, you say you've offered below and got it. I've had closing dates where people have offered at the same time and they've just come back with the same offer and got it. So it doesn't always mean that you have to improve your offer. It just means there's other people there that our client obviously makes the decision, we advise, but need to make it as fair as possible for everybody. And yeah, that's it really.
Yeah, Karen actually said, great advice to a family put off offering a closing date with another agent as the agent made them feel they didn't have a chance. There you go. Yeah. That's the exact example. And that's the thing you do not want to do. How on earth, as an agent, are you going to feel if you end up putting everybody off and you have no one offering at the closing date? I would be affronted. I wouldn't know what to say to that. So you need to make sure that everybody is in the mix to do that. Definitely, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, a closing, everybody deserves the opportunity to put forward their offer, their best price offer, like you say, Jim, not something that's out with their limits just to try and get the property and then make them feel resentful at the end of it that they've overpaid.
It's absolutely atrocious that another agent should, an agent should be actually putting somebody off offering.
I know.
You should encourage every single offer to come in.
Yeah.
And then from there, everybody's got their own choice about what one they want to choose. I even had, sometimes it's not even the highest offer they'll choose. No. Sometimes it's not the highest offer that necessarily gets it. It's sometimes the cleanest offer. And by I mean clean, there's no conditions. In other words, I'm in rented accommodation. I'm ready to go. This comes back to last week when we talked about cash buyers.
Yeah.
People actually think they're a cash buyer, but a cash buyer to us is, I've got the money in the bank, I'm in rented accommodation, I can give 20 days notice and I can go. Yeah. And I can buy the property. That is a great position to be in. So don't let that put you off, even though you think you might have the lowest offer. You never know. They might end up choosing that. I got £20,000 off a property that I bought from another agent a few years back, and they never knew that I was prepared to meet them halfway. They never asked the question. And I tell that story to today, and even now.
Which
I was going to pay them 10,000 more, and they never actually asked the question. Amazing, eh?
Yeah, if they were executing good negotiating skills, they should have.
Yeah, that's the reality. Thank you, Deborah, for your comments. Really good. Fife Properties are clearly ahead of the rest. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Deborah, for that.
Thanks, Deborah.
Yeah, so when the lockdown restrictions were lifted from the Fife Property Market, those 3 months allowed Fife homeowners to reevaluate their relationships with their homes, the true worth of the extra bedroom. This is the classic, which is driving the market for an office, became priceless. As people working from home, we are having to take calls and work from the dining room table. So, I was often I'm actually sitting in a room individually. I was evicted from the kitchen table. I spent most of my time at the kitchen table in lockdown, as most people have seen the backdrop. The kitchen's the heart of the home in some of my videos. I was evicted from the kitchen table because I used to get told time and time again, when are you finishing? Because we're wanting to get the tea.
You've been sat there for 8 hours.
So every single time I was getting evicted from the kitchen table. Fife properties with gardens and those with close to green spaces all of a sudden became more desirable, you know, in that time. More fuel was put on the fire of the Fife property market with the introduction of the stamp duty holiday, meaning buyers could save thousands of pounds in tax. I mean, up to £2,100 in tax if they moved before the end of March 2021. This stoked the local property market, and now property values are set at 3.3% higher today compared to a year ago. Now, that's only to today. I would be interested to see where we're going to be in spring, but we'll obviously get that in spring next year, where the figures coming out just now will actually come out into spring, and we'll see where property prices have gone up then, and that will come into the predictions for 2021, basically. So
the results that we've been achieving, I thought it was going to be a bit higher than 3.3%.
Remember, that's up to now.
Yeah.
That's everything. That's everything from because the land registry, the last quarter was the quarter almost to the end of June. So once we've just come out of lockdown, so you know you've got all your prices up to the end of June. So this is where we're seeing this. So when you come up to spring, you will probably manage to grab just up to the end of December, possibly if they release them earlier, and then that'll give us a true indication about where things are going. But I do my property update all the time to say that you know demand's outstripping supply, so we clearly know probably where these prices are going. But you know, I'll come back to saying really what we're now seeing is more people are moving to have a home office. You know, have you seen that, Jimmy?
100%. 100%. A lot of people. I think I said this before on the Fife Property Show. We had a lot of people moving from sort of Edinburgh, Midlothian area to just outside of it. So it's like Strathmiglo, Ogden area, sort of more rural, quite a feel where they can just get on a main road and quickly get back into Edinburgh, bigger property, bigger value, and a lot of people buy in East Neuk, changing of areas, bigger properties, bigger value from Glasgow and Edinburgh as well. Had a lot of sellers as well, talking about the stamp duty. I think we had, off the top of my head, I know we had 3 properties in Crail. All were second homes, holiday homes, from people in England, all wanting to sell now to take advantage of the stamp duty break, and they all sold at a closing date as well.
Richard, did you see that in the Lens market?
Yeah, I think
the number of people actually wanting to maybe upgrade the house that they've got to get the extra room.
Yeah, of course, and then we spoke about that in previous shows as well. I mean, people are now in the mindset, obviously they're looking for somewhere out with all the built up areas, they're wanting the extra room for obviously working from home. And yeah, I've seen that coming through quite a lot, and especially like along in areas in East Neuk and things, which are obviously people coming from Edinburgh and things looking for properties to rent, and that's the extra room for, and green spaces and things as well, like you say in the article. People want the outdoors and away from all the hustle and bustle of the built up areas like the cities. Obviously due to the pandemic, it's kind of pushed that and forced that issue with people.
So Phil's saying there, so my garage converting into garden room office starting on Monday is a good thing. Yeah, possibly. It depends. I mean, garage conversions can be a good thing. It depends. You need off-street parking, Phil. So make sure you've got off-street parking, at least for 2 or 3 cars, if you're going to do that. And make sure you have other space to store, you know, bikes, garden tools, lawnmowers, and other items. So you'd probably need a good size shed to accommodate for that. That's probably my advice. Is that what you would say as well, Jimmy?
I would say yes, but I would say it depends on the buyer. A lot of people might. I mean, how many people have you been out to? They have a garage and you've never seen a car in it, storage.
All the time.
All the time.
I think I've been out to one property recently that he actually stored his car in the garage. I don't think I've ever seen anybody else store their car in the garage. So it all depends on the buyer that's walking through the door. There'll be a buyer out there that need that extra room that'll pay a premium for that. But might be someone that need it for storage. So I'll say it could pay dividends for the right buyer if he's looking to sell. But ultimately, for people that are looking to do extensions or conversions, I always say if it's a home that you're going to be living in forever, you can't really put a price on that. Really, that's where you're going to be forever.
Yeah, we do get people looking for properties with garages. Garages are deal breakers for some people because they want them for workshops for their cars. Cherry Court was a double garage, a fantastic double garage in Cherry Court in Methil, and that'd be a classic workshop, or even a home gym on the other side of it, and or a work or a whatever you could use it for. But there's a lot of space. Plus the fact that with the rise of self-employed contractors, as well, it's a great area for storage.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely deal breakers. Phil says he could fit 4 cars in the drive, so yeah, no danger there.
You're okay then, Phil.
I would say you're fine with that. Yeah, so the drive for the market, really, we found it's come out of lockdown, is for the extra bedroom. And that's what's driven the market to go higher and higher and higher, and demand to go more and more and more. One of the things we didn't envisage was the unprecedented amount of people actually saying, I tell you what, I'm wanting that extra room now, so I'm prepared to move. Because before lockdown, they weren't prepared to move because they didn't need the extra room. More and more people, like Amazon, like the banks, the mortgage companies, the solicitors, no doubt about that. And people that would normally work in an office at a desk and not actually have interaction with any customers are actually now preferring to work from home, because it's a better quality of life and lifestyle and more flexibility. And the fact is, they don't need to travel in 2 hours to get to Edinburgh if they're here. I mean, I did the Edinburgh run when I worked with Standard Life, and I'll tell you what, it was a killer every day. It was basically three, almost 4 hours out of your calendar, out your time every single day. And then I says to myself, that's half of my working day I'm spending traveling back and forward to work. This doesn't make sense at all. So that's why I ended up taking a job locally and a manufacturing facility, as an accountant.
Agreed.
So that really drove the market in terms of that. So that's what's driving it now, and that's where we're getting unprecedented demand. So the fallout of the increased demand for the new home, meant that Fife Properties on the market coming out of lockdown in the early summer, with those extra rooms and gardens were snapped up in days for full price and even more. Fife buyers were having to spend time in their stamp duty savings on paying top dollar for their home, for their dreams. Yet the increased number of properties coming to the market in the late summer quenched a lot of that demand, and the prices being achieved became a little more reasonable, realistic. Well, maybe. In some areas, they just went mental, and they still are. And the increased number of properties, I've actually done individual sections. So if you go into our pages, our social media pages, I've actually done individual reports for each area. And this is generally right across Fife in general. Hence the reason why I say, well, some areas are actually still outstripping supply for demand. And actually prices are still being achieved way beyond. The increased number of properties sold, so much so that nationally, almost 2/3 of homes have been sold, subject to concluding missives, that would have been expected at this time next year. So basically, we've actually reached a record level. And actually, I looked at that. So however, as we know, just because the property is sold, subject to concluded missives, that doesn't mean to say the property is actually sold until, I always say, it's never over till the money's in the bank.
Yeah,
that's really what it is. And we still keep going hammer and tong at it for ages. We still keep going with the solicitors as well, pushing that through. That's one of the services we identified as needs to be done, is keep contacting the solicitor, keep pushing it through for your client to make sure it's happening. When we get a sale, it doesn't stop there, does it, Jimmy?
No, I had this on Thursday, actually. Got contacted from, I was giving my client an update on where I thought it was at. Let's just say, for example, this one, he thought that it was all on track for the 8th. Rung the other client involved. I was actually dealing with, strange, I was dealing with the buyer of his property, then I was actually dealing with someone with another agent, but I was actually dealing with the client that he's buying from, because they didn't have any update. So the seller that we're acting for, he thought it was the 8th. The people that he was buying property thought it was the 11th, the date of entry, and the people buying our client's property thought it was the 15th. So I had to spend an hour. I spent an hour of my time ringing each solicitor, updating each person, and making sure it was all on track time, that it was on the 15th. That ultimately, the person that my client was buying from thought it was the 11th, and she had all her sort of stuff organised for my laptop's about to run out there. She had all our stuff planned for the 11th, but I told her, to be honest, I know you probably want to hear this, but ultimately, date of entries, it's good to have a target to aim for, but ultimately, my client hasn't concluded missives on his property yet. So you're setting up a date of entry on something that is not a dead cert. So you're throwing money out the window for something that might not even happen.
Mm-hmm.
You should be staying patient until you can actually know that dead cert is happening. But that was my advice to her. I don't think it was. Sometimes it's hard to hear, but they need to hear it.
Yeah, it is the key process, though, that you need to make sure that every party is singing off the same sheet. And I know, and I'll come back to saying, you know, solicitors have a hard deal. You know, they get it from all ends, and any support we can give to them as estate agents and make sure that everybody's singing the same song on their behalf, we will do as a result of that. I mean, you know, that's where I come back to saying a lot of people think it's, you know, it's just up to the point of sale that we're involved, but that's not us. That's not what we do. We need to make sure this all goes through. Hence the reason why our fall through rate is virtually nothing. Ultimately. And yet you hear stories of people's fall through rates being like, our fall through rate's like 20 and 30%. And I'm like, what? How could your fall through rate be 20 and 30%? That's crazy. I would never dream of a property falling through. You know, I don't understand how that could happen. But now I do, based on the fact that what we know about what other people do. That's why I understand why that could happen now.
Yeah, I think what your advice there, Jimmy, is really good. And it just demonstrates, obviously, what a good agent should be doing, keeping track on things and following it through and keeping your client on the right track, right up to the point of obviously exchange and conclusion. So, yeah, and I mean, if you're not doing that, then that's why you're going to have a higher fall through rate.
It's added value. You know, that's what it is. It's all about added value. And if we can add something in value all the way through our process, you know, 1% improvement on 100 different things, we give people 100% overall improvement and added value to what we're doing, you know, as to what everybody else would normally do. And that's where I think our expertise lies. Why not use it if we've got it? You know, I that's just how our business runs. And I think that's how everybody should run. But unfortunately, over the years, I've begun to realise that's not how everybody else runs. I just took it for granted.
Yeah, I would say it's key to not have the fall through rate as well, is speaking to all buyers and qualifying them correctly and not letting any Tom, Dick and Harry through the door. You need to make sure that funding's in place, or if they need to sell, that what they're doing with their property is on the market, is it not, have they added value, etc., etc. You need to know. Sometimes it might give you feel like we're asking a load of questions to be personal, but ultimately this is our client that we're dealing with. Probably, well, most likely than not, it's going to be their biggest asset, and they're allowing you to come and see their home. So we need to be making sure that we're covering every basis to make sure that we're getting the right people.
Yeah, I will
through the door. The stress-free process also, obviously, that's sometimes out of control, but we need to make sure that's okay.
Yeah, I will tooth and nail for my client to make sure they get the right deal in the right circumstances. You know, I will never sleep until that happens.
Yeah, I think as well, Jim, like you say, Jim, as well. I mean, you were giving that lady advice, and maybe it's not what she wanted to hear, and it was quite hard for her to take. Obviously, that she's obviously got all this in place, and it shouldn't be. But I think in the long run, you're being honest with her. She'll probably thank you for that, because nobody else was going to tell her.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think a lot of our business, or a lot of the business that I hope to, I get, is from being honest and telling people either your property, no, sorry, it's not worth that. This is the evidence to juice that, or it's worth more than that, or this is what you need to do in place. Because ultimately, the biggest thing for probably putting your house on the market is going to be trust on the agent that's going to do what they said on the tin and be transparent.
That's another show in itself, isn't it? Turning up to a customer to deliver the news that their property isn't worth $500,000.
Yeah.
and it's only really worth about 160,000.
Yeah. I've had a couple of people, unfortunately, crying when I've told them the value of their house, but ultimately the last two people that I've done that to, they didn't really want to move. So I've told them that you're staying here forever. It doesn't matter what you've paid for it. Unfortunately, it's not where you thought it was, but this is be your forever home. You've got your family here. It doesn't matter. And so slowly they realise that even if they move, they're not going to get better than what they got. So it's just being honest and
That's a
transparent.
dilemma, doesn't it? Where it's like you assess the situation, you think you're not going to get anything else better. And you're actually in the most idyllic place that you've got, and your home is absolutely beautiful. And then at the end of that conversation, a lot of people realise it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. And my job is done. You know, that's what I'm there to do. I'm not ultimately, you know, it'd be fantastic if somebody chose me to sell their house. You know, I'm grateful every single day that happens. You know, I'm always grateful for that. But if I can deliver the result that they want, and it means that they're staying where they are, then that's ultimately what my proposition is. That's what I'm there for. I've given them the right information and advice to do that. You know, and I know you guys are the same.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of our business model is to initially help people, and that is definitely how I operate. So,
helping you manage life as it happens. It's been a tagline for the very beginning.
It has, yeah.
Okay, so however, as we all know, just because the property is sold, it doesn't mean the property is actually sold. The number of people that have moved home in the last 12 months in Fife is, as you would expect, much lower. Over the last 10 years, the average number of homes in Fife have been 4,937. However, I've just looked at the numbers just now, and Rightmove up to now is actually saying it's 4,643. Wow. We're on track to actually hit the average for every single year for the past 10 successive years, and that's without 3 months or 4 months of the year without doing any transactions, really, in a nutshell. So it's all come in place, and that would predict for me that maybe next year is going to be better than we expect. So what is the Fife property worth today? Drilling down to the 4 types, let's have a look at this of home. Some interesting stats appear now with the as if by magic. Hopefully this will appear. So there's the numbers here. Okay, so let's look at this. So overall in Fife, over the past year on year, the average price paid last year was 250,000 for a detached property in Fife. It's now 286,000. Now, this is what's been sold. Remember, this is not what every single value in Fife is. This is only what's been sold because, and Fife semi-detached properties, 160,000 versus 165,000. And Fife townhouses or terrace properties, 127,000 versus 133,000. And Fife apartments or flats, 110,000 versus 124,000. So, what's your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I would say that's bang on track on what I'm seeing. Obviously, every property is different, so it's be slightly different for each home. But yeah, I'm not surprised about those numbers at all, and I think that will, from what I can see right now, that will keep carrying on into the new year, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard.
Yeah, I agree. I do think as we head into next year, prices will continue to go in that direction. I think we spoke about demand and things as well. I mean, that's just continually, obviously demand is increasing continually, and I think that will go into the new year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course these are all overall averages. I mean, individual areas, again, as I said, it's on our vlogs and blogs on social media where I've actually shown the individual areas. I've actually put them out to the community pages as well, so people in the community pages will be able to read them on your local community page individually. I've just put them on to give them an idea of where it is. So to give you an idea of what Fife properties are selling for by square footage, these are the average values as well per square footage. So you'll be able to compare what you've got square footage wise, multiply that, and that'll give you a rough indication about where your Fife property value should sit in essence. I mean, if you want a more confirmed figure there, all you need to do is go onto our page. We've got an instant valuation tool, which is actually pretty accurate. You know, we've spent a lot of time and effort honing and developing that tool to get it very, very accurate to within a few thousand either side. So that tool for our instant valuation tool, I'll maybe post it on here later, will help you give you a rough indication about what your Fife property is worth. Now, to be honest, if you're not selling, you can still go in and do that anyway. You know, just out of curiosity, I'd be curious.
Yeah,
I did mine. And it's like, what? It's worth that much? Maybe need to go and see the bank again and see a remortgage. Maybe need to remortgage some of that money out and start buying buy-to-let property and reinvesting it because I can get it at a cheaper rate here as I can on a personal mortgage in terms of a buy-to-let mortgage. So that's how I looked at it. So I'll post that link if anybody wants to have a look at the Fife property value and do an instant valuation, more than happy for you to do that. It's not going to cost you anything. It's just a free service anyway. So that'll give you a rough indication. So if you have the square footage of your house, you can multiply that number by that price, and that'll give you a rough indication as well. And if the two are matching, I'd say it's pretty accurate then. You know, we're pretty on ball, because we use a number of sources and valuations. We'll use indexation, we'll use what currently is on the market, and we'll use what currently sold as well. And usually when the three of them tie up, it kind of gives us the accurate valuation of what the property's worth. Exactly what a surveyor does. So here we go. What about 2021 when? Well, normally when the country's GDP drops, this is the gross domestic product, drops like a stone, as it did in the summer of 2020, the property market follows in unison. Yet, as the economy went south, the house price growth and activity in the property market went north. This would appear to be quite a remarkable outcome given that the economic framework, and it is gradually becoming clear that as the Fife property market is concerned, people's time in lockdown has been spent reflecting on what they really wanted in their home, and what has really meant that the normal rules of the game simply do not apply for now. So, I mean, predictions for 2021, where do you think this market is going to go, and what do you think is going to drive it, Richard?
I think that, like I just said, obviously, I think things are going to continue into the new year of 2021. Obviously, there's always that element of uncertainty, but I think that the market's quite strong. We've had record year, despite obviously the implications of lockdown and things. So I think it will continue through, and I think 2021 will continue to be a good year on the back of this year. There is always an element of uncertainty, but as we predicted, as opposed to what everyone else predicted for this year, you never know, and this has been like a record year, as we say.
It'd be interesting to see what the viewers think. You know, if you post comments about what you think the predictions for the market in 2021 will be.
I think everybody's got mixed reviews on what they think, so it's good to hear.
I think the property market's going to pan out in 2021.
Yeah.
Jimmy, what's your thoughts?
I think I'll just continue where we are now, to be honest. Up until a point, I think it will just keep carrying on as we are. I mean, people's circumstances are going to keep changing, so people are going to be keeping to sell. There's always going to be people, new jobs, lose jobs, life moves on, divorces, people want to downsize, upsize. So right now, I think the demand is so limited stock available right now that it just has to keep going up. There's too many people out there looking to buy for the prices not to go up.
Yeah. One of the key indicators for me for next year, which will drive this market, is the fact that everybody says, oh, everybody's actually exhausted the market this year by putting their house on the market and selling, because they've all run to the market right now to avoid the stamp duty threshold. But the key is, if that's what they've done, therefore there'll be less properties on the market next year, therefore there will still be the demand, therefore, guess what? Prices will go up.
Yeah.
You know, supply and demand. So the demand's still there. So, there'll be less properties on, if that's one of the scenarios. The other scenario is people just keep going as they're going, and the demand's still there, and then we keep going. The government really can't afford a housing market crash, so they will do everything within their power to make sure the housing market is supported. And I think ADS, the 4% additional dwelling supplement and the 3% one in England, will actually be a last drop attempt of actually stimulating the market if it comes to it. I think they'll suspend it at some point if they need to stimulate the market again, because you'll find at 4% ADS, you'll find a lot of buy-to-let landlords coming back into the market if that's the case. The other predictions as well, I mean, Zoopla is predicting a house price growth of 1%. I still don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're still going to continue to go more and more as people continue to work from home. Unemployment, well, that might go higher. Will that affect things? It possibly could, but the rental market will still be there for people if they, and the government's not going to let folk lose their house. They're just not going to let that happen. They need the availability of credit in the market. So the mortgage market will still be there. The banks will still have an abundance of money because they won't let the housing market crash. Because if they let the housing market crash, then there's a knock-on effect to the banks with liquidity. And if the bank's got a problem with liquidity, then credit gets limited in supply. Therefore, that we'll go through another credit crunch. Therefore, guess what? We've got a repeat of 2007, 2008. And they're not going to let that happen. They can't let that happen. So I think property prices will continue to rise at a reasonable rate. I don't think it's going to be 1%. I think it'll be more in our area. Possibly because, remember, this is UK house price growth from Zoopla, 1%. Possibly because the big cities, a lot of people will actually decide to move out from there to more rural areas, like Fife, for example.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, Jim. And I think the increase in demand that we've seen over the last few months is going to take a long time to level out. So that is it's going to go into next year and push things up.
What's your thoughts, Jimmy?
Well, from us, just knowing what we deal with ourselves, there's been so many closing dates set that we've had. Ultimately, buyers miss out. I remember one in Crail a couple of weeks ago. I think we had 5 or 6 offers. We had property in Aylesbury. Second person through the door bought it. We had 4 or 5 other people wanted to view. All these people are still needing to buy somewhere.
Yeah,
they're still in the market. There's not enough property for them to buy. So whether it's tomorrow or next year, there's still so many buyers out there. So it's going to keep going up and up, in my opinion.
The amount of times I go to somebody's property and they actually say to me, "Have you got a list of people looking to buy?" Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's a bigger list out there when you put your house in the market that we can retarget in order to hit that market and probably get even a bigger market for your property, which drives the price at the end. You know, that's where I would say it is. And ultimately, that's what we are there for. Our job is to drive the price, get the best deal for our seller, and represent them and push the property through right to the very end. And the buyer and seller both come out of this in a win-win situation, happy. And on that note, guys, that's an hour already.
I know.
Wow.
It's a quick one to do.
Where does all the time go? Maybe we talk too much.
I think that was the quickest one yet, to be honest.
It does fly by when you're talking. I know.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, James. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Danny. Really appreciate you watching the show. If you get a chance, please like, share, comment as well, and share with other people. Really appreciate pushing us out to a bigger market, because more and more people get involved and get a voice in the Fife property market. And on that note, guys, I'll see you next week at 9:30 for the next episode of the Fife Property Show.
Thanks.
Bye for now.
Bye.